Here is the games that are slated for Saturday. It will be the number 4 seeded Bengals at the Tennessee Titans. The Titans 3.5-point favorites. That game at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time on CBS. You can also stream it on Paramount Plus. And then the late game Saturday, the 6 seeded 49ers at the number 1 Packers at Lambeau. Packers 5.5-point favorites as of Thursday afternoon. The over-under set at 47. That game 8:15 p.m. Eastern time. And for more on those games and to discuss strengths and weaknesses of the quarterbacks involved, one of our resident quarterbacks, former pro Danny Kanell, joining us now here on CBS Sports HQ. Danny, let's start with the AFC opener between the Bengals and the Titans. A lot of people very impressed with the evolution of Joe Burrow this season. The new Joe Cool to many fans. For you, what is his biggest strength?
So, Jeremy, this is one of those ones where we need to invent a word for it because I'm kind of tired of the cliches, the swagger. I think he's got that. He toes that line between confident and cocky really well. But I went with clutch. Like, it's another cliche, the clutch gene. Whatever term you want to use for what you look for in an intangible in the quarterback, Joe Burrow has it. I mean, we saw it coming into the game last week. Remember, we were sitting there in studio. I'm like, did you see his jacket today? He's coming in with this like puffy snow jacket, but it's like, it's swagged out. It wasn't just your normal one. You got to be confident in yourself to be able to pull that off. Then after with the tinted shades, I know it sounds like it doesn't matter, but it does sort of translate to the field. And if you look what he did down the home stretch of the season, where he had the 2-week stretch against Baltimore and Kansas City, threw for 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 900 yards, 900 plus yards in those performances when they needed them, and then tops it off, follows it up with a pretty impressive performance against the Raiders in a playoff game. It's the definition of coolness, and he doesn't get rattled, even with an offensive line, which hasn't been great. And I love the mindset of him saying, you know what? We're not done yet. We're going to get used to this. This is the area code we want to be in, where we're talking about making playoffs, and we shouldn't be celebrating because this is where we're going to be all the time. So the intangible aspect to Joe Burrow's game that I'll call clutch is what makes his game so special.
Our Phil Simms compared him to a young Joe Montana, who's also a guy that was known for being pretty clutch as well. Okay, so when you look at his other side of his game, Danny, what's the biggest weakness for you?
He doesn't have many. I mean, I think one that he can't really help is the lack of protection. His offensive line has to do better, and that's a concern for me when he travels on the road in crowd noise. But really, it's experience, the lack of experience in the playoffs, playing a lot of football. He really, hasn't played that much football yet and very little in the playoffs, and now he's got to go on the road. And as cool as he is, there's a different speed. I'll never forget my rookie year. I was talking to Steve DeBerg, who was my quarterback coach, and he said there are 3 speeds in the NFL. There's preseason speed, there's regular season speed, and there's postseason speed. And you have to get used to each level that you're playing in. So I think that's the only thing he lacks, and the future is bright for him. And, they are an underdog in this situation. I would not be surprised, Jeremy, if the Bengals won this game, but I think if they do, the run comes to a stop the following week against either the Bills or the Chiefs. But this Bengals team has a bright future ahead of them. It's because of Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and Joe Burrow's done a fantastic job with them over the course of this season. Certainly a candidate for Comeback Player of the Year. Danny, as you look at the lines for this weekend and some of the prop wagers, what's the best prop wager for Burrow that you've seen so far?
So I'm going to ride that the trend of what he's been doing. He's been on a tear, and I'm going to take over his passing yardage total. It's pretty high at 275.5, but I think a bunch of different ways this could play out. I mean, one, if I think they're going to win the game, I think he's going to have a massive game. He's got incredible talent out there working with him on the field, and Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd, some great targets to work with. They've had such a great connection. And then if they are down, if they are getting beat, I think he can bring them from behind, and there could be some garbage time yards. But either way, I think Joe Burrow goes over his passing yardage total. I think he's been delivering all season long. I don't think that'll change. Even if he does get pressured, he's mobile enough. He's able to improvise. He can make plays on the outside. So I would go over his passing yardage total.
When you look at the quarterback matchup between these two teams, it actually looks to be a fairly even matchup, even though one quarterback has a lot of experience and the other one is just in his second season. The other side of the matchup, of course, we're talking about quarterback Ryan Tannehill, who's had an up and down season, but over the past 3 games, much like Burrow, he's found his groove. With that in mind, let's talk Tannehill, his biggest strength as they face the Bengals, Danny.
Well, I think he's the definition of a game manager, and he's gonna be consistent. He's gonna be durable. He's gonna be out there for you to count on. Somebody that can get in and out of the huddle. And even without Derrick Henry, the fact that this team is still a number one seed is pretty remarkable. And I know they've had a supporting cast around him that has done a pretty good job, but I think you still have to look at Ryan Tannehill and the job he's done as the quarterback there. And there have been a lot of critics, myself included. And coming down the stretch, he's sort of figured things out and been much more consistent as just a deliverer in this offense. Now, it's going to put, you'll see where I get to in the weakness where maybe it sounds counterintuitive, but if he has Derrick Henry, which everyone is waiting on bated breath to see what Derrick Henry looks like, his play has been much more consistent. And, if you don't have your lead back, who's one of the better backs in the NFL, I think that's understandable if at times he's trying to do too much this season.
Yeah, expected to have a decision on Derrick Henry's status on Friday. Still has not been activated off the IR. Okay, so for Tannehill then, what's his biggest weakness?
So I think he needs the run game. He needs Derrick Henry to be back. They need that, he needs to work off a play action pass. He needs to get guys open down the field that would get the safeties to suck up and the linebackers to come up and bite on the run. And that's where he's at his best, is when you can take advantage of that. Or when you can get him outside off the, bootlegs and play action and get him on the perimeter with his legs, because he is a pretty good athlete, somebody who played wide receiver before. But you look at the numbers, and it is pretty startling how different Ed has been. I mentioned him as a game manager. He really got exposed somewhat as a quarterback who can't just put the team on his back and say, all right, I'm going to throw it all over the yard and take you up and down the field. He really does need that run game. And when they do have Derrick Henry and they do have that run game, he's in the MVP conversation. When he's not, he becomes very pedestrian.
What's the top player prop then for Tannehill that you've seen?
So this one is the flip side of what we were talking about with Joe Burrow. And I'm going to look at the passing yardage total and go under, because even if Derrick Henry goes or he doesn't, I still think Mike Vrabel and this offensive staff, they understand the importance of, running the football, limiting Ryan Tannehill. They do not want to get in a shootout with Joe Burrow, because I think if you've gotten that sort of game, it clearly favors the Cincinnati Bengals, and it hurts the Tennessee Titans. You're playing at home. The other thing is, too, you're keeping the ball out of the hands of Joe Burrow. It's Joe Burrow can catch momentum. He gets hot. And if he's coming back on the field and getting in a shootout, he finds his rhythm. That can be a scary proposition for the Titans. So I think there's going to be a heavy dose of the run game. Whether Derrick Henry's out there or not, I think they're really going to try to stay committed to it. And then it's going to be more of the conservative approach. Let's run the ball. Let's keep it out of the hands of Burrow. And let's make sure we keep this thing in our hands where we can control the time of possession. So I think it'll be more of what you expect from Ryan Tannehill and where he's had some success, where you limit his exposure. So I'm going to say under his passing yardage total.
So overall, Danny, when you look at the quarterback matchup, you giving the edge to the Bengals and Burrow?
Yeah, I am. And, it's one of those great unknowns. I mean, I think you could see a game where Ryan Tannehill could, come out and have a very clean game and 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 230 yards passing. But if all things are equal and you gave each guy, the ball with 2 minutes and you had to come from behind, I would go with Joe Burrow every single time. The future is brighter for him, too. I just think he doesn't have the supporting cast right now. But just quarterback edge, I would give to Joe Burrow.
You saw the numbers there, the difference in his numbers when he has Derrick Henry in lineup and he doesn't, kind of an up and down season for him based on that. When we talk about up and down seasons, I mean, let's transition to Aaron Rodgers. He's had an up and down season, but it's been off the field, not on the field. On the field, he's been as elite as it gets. He is the favorite to win the MVP, to repeat as the most valuable player in the NFL. Danny, how do you narrow it down to just one strength when it comes to Aaron Rodgers?
You don't, Jeremy. He's the total package. He really is. And when you look at on the field, he does it all. He looks effortless when he's running around, makes throws. The ball comes off with ease. He's got a cannon for an arm. He doesn't need to set his feet. He can make off-balance throws. He's mobile enough where he can extend plays. And you talk about one of the most accurate passers in the history of the game. And then on top of that, you look at where he's able to deliver the ball in some of the tightest windows that are out there. I really think right now, and I know Tom Brady has had an exceptional season and he's still playing great at his age. I think Aaron Rodgers is in a class all by himself, and he really has throughout his whole career. Probably the most perplexing thing when you look at it is, well, why does he only have 1 Super Bowl? And that's a very nuanced discussion and a debate that a lot of people like to have. But I still think right now, Aaron Rodgers' peak of his game, is the best quarterback out there. And I also think, and this kind of plays off last year and this year, last year, the question marks about his future, and he was mad at his front office. That kind of sparked Aaron Rodgers to an MVP season. This year, it was some of the off-the-field stuff with vaccination status, and he got irritated and kind of woke him up. And you feel like an angry Aaron Rodgers with something to prove. He is kind of petty. I mean, his quirks and off the field issues with various people are kind of well documented. But when he wants to kind of stick it to somebody, it even motivates him even more. So I think Aaron Rodgers is playing exceptional football right now.
Yeah, great point, Danny. The fact that he's got that chip on his shoulder, he knows that people want him to lose, makes him want to win even more. On the other side of that, I mean, is there even a weakness in his game?
Physically, no. I think, so I put no weaknesses. Now, I do think there is a weakness, but this is really nitpicky, and it's not even verifiable. The leadership, the intangibles, like how much of a motivator is he out there? And, some of his former teammates have bashed him and said, Aaron's all about Aaron. He gets the stats. And I don't even know if that's true, but it kind of goes back to why does he only, if he has this much talent, why does he only have one Super Bowl? And, the last time he played the 49ers on the road in an NFC championship game, some of those intangibles that aren't the most flattering were on display. When he had a fumble, didn't really get on the ball that fast, and looked like he was pretty nonchalant about the loss. I mean, it was a butt kicking, and he was just like, he was looking around. You could just tell he was kind of blaming other people. So weaknesses physically and what he can do, there are none. I do think questioning some of the leadership, getting guys to rally around you, belief in you, I think that's worthy of a conversation, but it's sort of a debate to me that gets a little bit exhausting, and you can't deny what he does in the field. So I put, as far as limitations, there are none to what he can do with the football in his hands.
To your point, I just can't remember a time when he's had to put the team on his back and take them down the field. We know with Brady's done it in elimination situations and come out on top. We just haven't seen that with Rodgers, not that I can recall anyways. He had 2 interceptions in the opener versus New Orleans, but you talk about the efficiency. I mean, he's only thrown 2 interceptions since then, the rest of the season. An incredible season for Aaron Rodgers as he looks to move through. How has his game evolved, though, Danny, as the season has gone along to just give you that opinion that he's almost unbeatable at this point?
Well, I mean, there was a game that stood out to me. I believe it was the Ravens game, and Davante Adams was out there, and they had a bunch of issues, guys out, and Baltimore pretty much doubled Davante Adams every time. We're like, go ahead and beat us with other guys, and he did. Like, his ability to kind of win with less, and it's been one of the worthy criticisms of him against his own front office is give me more talent around me. So his ability to kind of evolve and not try to do too much on his own, play within the system, I think is really kind of, and I think it's a credit to Matt LaFleur too, who's as a head coach has kind of worked with Aaron Rodgers much better than Mike McCarthy did in the past, and some egos got in the way there too. But I think his evolution within the system of staying within the framework, not trying to force it to Davante Adams when it wasn't there, and taking what the defense has given you has been one of those things that's allowed him to keep excelling at this point.
So let's talk about his player prop then. What's the top player prop for Aaron Rodgers?
So for me, I get some pretty good value on this one. His touchdown passes is at 2.5, and you can get it at plus 155. I take that all day long, especially because of the value. I think he's going to rise to the occasion here. San Francisco's coming to town. I do think San Francisco is going to run the ball against Green Bay pretty successfully. So I think San Francisco will put some points on the board. And Aaron Rodgers playing at home, I think he's like, this is one of those ones where you kind of have to take the bait here, take the value, and I think he has a 3-touchdown day against the San Francisco 49er defense, especially with some of the question marks along with Bosa, the concussion. Is he going to be there or not? I think he finds the time and he makes those plays in the secondary.
With the 49ers, let's talk about that last starting quarterback in action on Saturday, Jimmy Garoppolo. He enters the game with all kinds of question marks over just how healthy he actually is. We know about the thumb, but last week sprained the throwing shoulder in the win over Dallas. He'll play, but it's admitted he's not 100%. What is his biggest strength as he heads to Lambeau?
So I think it's efficiency, and I think he's just a very steady, capable quarterback. Now, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch may not think that's enough, and that's why they want the upside potential of a guy like Trey Lance, who they drafted this past season in the first round. But he's been pretty consistent within Kyle Shanahan's system, in this West Coast system where you got to throw on rhythm, got to throw on timing. And, I played in this system, Jeremy, and it is pretty quarterback friendly, and he has a pretty good grasp of it. he's just not able to stretch the field and utilize some things with his legs that they would like him to be able to do. So I think that's the one thing that's really a credit to him and why he's been able to take this team to a Super Bowl. And then if you remember that game against the Chiefs, there was a big play to be made and he just couldn't get it done. But the fact that he has been able to kind of keep his job this long, I think speaks volumes to, hey, at least he's consistent, he's efficient within the system, and he can operate it with pretty sound efficiently and use some of the weapons that he has around him.
So his biggest weakness then, Danny, for you?
To me, it's a lack of confidence. Now, it kind of works both ways here, Jeremy, so hear me out. I think Jimmy G, obviously playing a little bit banged up, I think that impacts your confidence. I look at him and maybe he's a little bit too safe. But I also think Kyle Shanahan doesn't have exactly 100% confidence in him, especially when they're playing the Cowboys. There's a chance to go for the jugular, and they just kind of hang around, and they're not able to kind of elevate their game and trust Jimmy G to keep chucking it around the yard. So I think the lack of confidence is both Jimmy G, maybe in his health and his overall abilities, but also Kyle Shanahan's play calling. I think he would like to open things up a little bit more, stretch the field vertically, and he just doesn't. So I think that's one of the bigger weaknesses here.
So his top player prop then as they head into Saturday's divisional game.
As I mentioned before, I think the 49ers are going to be able to run the football pretty well. And I think it goes back to the lack of confidence. They do not want to get in a shootout with Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Garoppolo versus him. They want to try to establish the run game, time of possession, keep it out of his hands. On the road, you take the crowd out of it. You take Aaron Rodgers out of his rhythm. So I think they'll limit Jimmy Garoppolo's exposure in this game. So I looked at the under his completion total. It's at 21.5, and I'll go under that. I think ideally, if you're Kyle Shanahan, you would love to have a day when he's about 19 or 20 of 26, 27, zero interceptions, protects the football, and they're able to run the football in this game against Green Bay. He
is CBS Sports HQ NFL analyst, our resident quarterback, Danny Kanell, discussing strengths and weaknesses with us as we head towards the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Let's take a look at Danny's prop bets for Joe Burrow. He likes him over the 276.5 passing yards. Tannehill, he says, take him under. 239.5 pass yards is the number there. For Aaron Rodgers, go over the 2.5 passing touchdowns. Danny thinks Aaron is going to respond and come out with a big game against the 49ers. And then their quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, you see his prop there as well. Our game on Saturday has the upstart Bengals, who haven't won a divisional round playoff game in 32 years, trying to end that drought against Tannehill, Henry, and the Titans, and win their first ever road playoff game. Big injury news for the Bengals, too. They will have pass rusher Trey Hendrickson back. An outstanding season for him. You can catch this game on CBS at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can also stream the game on Paramount+.
So Sunday will be just as fun as Saturday. A pair of rematches here with the Rams heading to Tampa Bay. They did see the Bucs earlier in the season, taking down defending champs here, winning that one 34-24. A little bit different this time around. TB12 won't have his weapons, but the Rams, looks like all those acquisitions and trades and signings that we saw in the season kind of paying off. That at 3 p.m. Then the Bills and Chiefs. Again, another rematch here. The Bills winning that one, but different teams at that time. The Chiefs were still trying to figure out who they were. I guess we get the answer because they're 13-4 and looking like they're trending towards maybe another trip to maybe add another Lombardi, while the Bills, they stand in their way. That one at 6:30 on CBS. All right, let's bring Danny Kanell back here to look at some of those QBs on Sunday, starting with those strengths and weaknesses and starting with the GOAT himself, Tom Brady. What's his strength heading into this Sunday?
So it's hard to put it in one spot, but Brandon, I'll tell you what I think he's been doing really well lately and really throughout his whole career. It's just the pinpoint precision accuracy. And I thought it was really on display last week against Philly, but it's been on display his entire career. And it's the combination of knowing exactly where to go with the football, but then delivering the ball right where it's supposed to on time. And, there were several plays, last week in the game where you're wondering, all right, no Antonio Brown, no Chris Godwin. How are they going to generate in the offense? And he's hitting Gronk up the seam. He's going to Mike Evans, on the outside. And he just knows exactly where to put the football and keeps guys on the move. Like, it's little hidden yardage, too. Like, there's one thing about completing a pass, but then there's another thing to keep guys on the run. And Tom Brady, his pinpoint precision accuracy, which Bruce Arians did call out, said he was like a surgeon in that game, but he's really been a surgeon throughout his whole career. And I think that's the thing at this point. when he's still able to do it at such a high level because he gets the ball out quickly and he puts it in exactly the right spot, which is what makes him stand out as one of the greatest of all time.
He's been 5-0 since landing there in Tampa, not to mention he has another one of those rings there. What's his biggest weakness, if there is one here, for Tom Brady?
Oh, this is easy. I mean, he's old. He's 44. It's mobility. He can't run. Like, and this game is changing where you're seeing, more athletic quarterbacks and guys who can extend plays and then get outside the pocket. Tom Brady is the definition of a pocket passer at this point in his career. And I know he's had some fun and he's calling out Madden. He's talking about his speed rating because he's had his longest rush of his career. But don't get it twisted, Brandon. He does not have any mobility whatsoever. He doesn't want to. Bruce Arians doesn't want to. They know exactly where he's going to be in the pocket, which I do think could be concerning for the Bucs this weekend if they're not able to protect Tom Brady, because he's not going anywhere.
I can't imagine him on the run, but like you said, he has shown us he has wills here, so we'll see how that pans out with that pass rush there against the Rams. All right, how about that top prop there for TB12?
All right, his rushing yardage total is 1.5 yards. They're begging you, Brandon, to go over. Oh, he'll get that easy. Go over. Only needs 1 yard and 1.5 yards. Don't take the bait. Go under all day long.
Wow.
I think he's going to get sacked a couple times here. I'm worried about Tristan Wirfs. We just saw the graphic up there. I don't, walking boot, even if he does play, how healthy is he? The loss of him is significant. The Bucs can win without the skill players on the outside. But if they have issues along the offensive line, that is what concerns me the most. And if Tom Brady's not protected, that's where he becomes human. He becomes pedestrian because of that lack of mobility. So take the under. Tom Brady, just a measly 1.5 yards, go under, because it's going to be a big fat 0.
Wow, no faith in the QB sneak there. I mean, that is good for at least 1 or 2 yards there, but I guess you don't want to play that route. That's okay.
You don't want to hurt him. You don't want to hurt him.
That's right. That's the franchise.
Yeah.
On the opposite side there, Matthew Stafford, look, getting his first playoff win in such a long time in the league, of course, a lot of years in Detroit, now here with the Rams. What's his strength heading into Sunday?
Arm strength. It's all about the arm strength from Matthew Stafford. I mean, this dude has an absolute cannon. And it was the specific reason why Sean McVay wanted to make the trade for Jared Goff. Let's get somebody in here who's a little bit more of a gunslinger, who can hit those deep balls and extend the field vertically. There's not a throw in the NFL in any playbook that Matthew Stafford cannot make. And it's something that also gets him in trouble sometimes. But you talk about being able to put the ball in tight windows, 30, 40 yards down the field on a rope. He can make every single throw there. And it's the reason they made this move for him, because of the absolute cannon that he does have.
So he has the arm, but when we talk about the weakness coming into this one, he threw a few interceptions in the regular season getting to last week. What's his weakness here?
It's every once in a while, Brandon, you watch Matthew Stafford on tape and you just see a throw and you're like, what was that? Like, why did he throw it there? It's just a boneheaded mistake. Either tries to force it in a small window, tries to do too much. And at this point in his career, it's inexcusable. You've got to clean those up. And for somebody who was in an MVP conversation earlier this season, up to about week 8 or 9, and then to limp in the finish where since week 10, he's led the league in interceptions with 11, it's inexcusable. And it was a big reason those interceptions started coming right at their 3-game losing streak. So he's got to eliminate those if he wants to take this team to the promised land, which is why they brought him in, was to get that Super Bowl win at home in LA in their own backyard. He's got to cut down on those interceptions.
All right, you disrespected TB12 with the under with the rushing yards. What's your player prop here for Stafford? I'm assuming it's definitely not the running yards here.
No, it's not a rushing total. He can get out there if he has to, but this is still disrespectful. The interception total, I'm going to go over. It's set at 0.5. And I just think you have to follow the trend here of what Matthew Stafford has been throughout his career. Now, this doesn't mean they couldn't still win. He's been able to overcome interceptions before, but if it's under 1 and it's at 0.5, I think he's going to give you 1. There's going to be one of those moments where they take a shot down the field, he gets a little loose with the football, or he tries to squeeze it in a tight window because of that cannon that he has, where he's just going to give the Bucs the ball. So I think there's going to be at least an interception from Matthew Stafford, so I took the over.
All right, numbers don't lie. As you mentioned here, from week 16 to 18, he's definitely throwing interceptions, I've mentioned as well. On the other side here, Patrick Mahomes, look, we didn't think they were going to get back to this point. Here we are now, back into the postseason, and maybe contending here. What's his strength here for a guy that likes ketchup on his steak?
Since I've watched Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech when he was in college, there is not a better quarterback maybe in the history of the league, who off script makes plays. And we saw it even last year in the Super Bowl. Remember, he was running for his life and he's throwing like almost horizontal to the ground, like barely almost down, and he finds it and it goes right through receiver's arm, like 30 yards down the field. He can manipulate his arm angles. He can make every throw that's out there. But when plays break down, there was a pretty good one last week, a 3rd and 20 against the Steelers, and he found Travis Kelce for a touchdown, which really kind of kick-started the blowout in that game. That's when he's most dangerous. When things break down, he extends the plays. And most guys, when you're on the run, you can't make the same throws. You can make some good throws, but you can't wing it 50 yards down the field. Patrick Mahomes extends plays, and he can still make every single throw as if he was standing still, winding up in the pocket. His ability to make off-script plays is what separates him.
The reason why, like I said, the Chiefs are in this picture. What about his weakness heading into Sunday here?
Along those same lines, Brandon, it's when he's trying to do too much, he gets a little careless with it. You see the turnover bug kind of creep up, and he does try to make some of these circus plays. I mean, he's completed passes with his left hand. He's one of the first guys started completed passes underhand throwing. He just tries to do a little bit too much, and he likes to have fun, and he thinks, hey, I can do every play that's out there. I'm going to try to make it, and it gets him in trouble. And it's definitely the temptation when teams are basically saying, we're going to keep everybody in front of us, we're not going to let you take the big throw. Patrick Mahomes, early in the season and at times throughout his career, would still try to make those throws just to show you he was superhuman with that arm strength. So getting a little careless at times is his biggest weakness.
Yeah, we saw those numbers there against the Bills in Week 5. We'll get to Josh Allen in a second, but give me a prop play for Patrick Mahomes here.
So I was just talking about, I like the Bills in this game, in case you can't tell. But I think the Bills defensively are just going to do exactly what we're talking about. I think they're going to dare Patrick Mahomes to try to, drive the length of the field. Do not give up the 40, 50, 60-yard touchdown bomb. Force him to be patient. And in doing so, I think you'll see a lot of ball movement in between the hashes, and then you try to clamp down in the red zone and force them to field goals and force them to try to get stops in the red zone. And I think the Bills will have some success doing that. So I took the under Patrick Mahomes 2.5 touchdown total. I think they can hold Patrick Mahomes to 2 touchdowns, keep the ball out of his hands, and make sure they're not getting those big hitting plays through the air. So I took the under Patrick Mahomes. A little bit dangerous because he is a baller and he has played great at home in the playoffs. But I think the Chiefs could even still win. I don't think it'll be at Patrick Mahomes throwing for 3+ touchdowns, though.
All right, we'll see Mahomes in that offense. They've been clicking on all cylinders up to this point, so we'll see how that pans out, of course, against the Bills. And speaking against Buffalo here, Josh Allen, he's taking that next step, and I think got the monkey off his back when it came to the Patriots here. We saw that last week. What do you think his strength is heading into this one?
Oh, I think it's pretty easy. I mean, he's got a cannon, but he's a dual threat. Like, he runs the football as good as anybody in the league that's not named Lamar Jackson. Like, Lamar Jackson's otherworldly, but if Lamar Jackson didn't exist, we would be talking about Josh Allen. Like, who is this guy running the football? He's such a weapon in the red zone, on 3rd and short, on 4th and short, and the Bills are not afraid to use him because he's so big. He's durable. I mean, the guy's a monster. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. When he runs the ball, typically linebackers are looking to tee off on quarterbacks. I think linebackers, when they see Josh Allen running, they're thinking, man, I just better make sure I get him down, not if I can punish him. He is one of the better weapons in the NFL because the combination of what he can do with his arm and what he can do when he tucks it and runs it. And it makes it so confusing on the secondary because they're trying to, wait, what do I do? Do I come up and stop the run? And the minute they do that, he hits you over the top. And when he's back there scrambling around, they're dropping deep. He notices it. He takes off with his legs and he kills you with them.
I thought you were going to say his strength was playing in the cold weather because I think he got over that hurdle there like we saw last week. What about his weakness here?
So he's a little bit erratic at times. It was hard to find a weakness, but there has been a consistency issue, and you saw him, early in his career struggle with the completion percentage, but he solved that problem. But sometimes he's so long and he's big and he runs and the ball just kind of flies on him. So you see some flyers there. And if you fly it over a guy over the middle, a tight end or a crossing route, that can get you in trouble with an interception over the back end, secondary, tip ball or something like that. So just a little bit erratic, and it's part of, what makes him special is because he does take chances at times. But I'd like to see him kind of control that somewhat in what could be a high-scoring game there at Arrowhead Stadium.
All right, what about your prop here? It seems like you're liking his arm and his mobility. Are we going that direction for the player prop?
Yeah, I'm going with the rushing total. Now, for a quarterback to have a rushing total of 51.5, it's like, oh, whoa, that's a pretty big number. But if you look at the way Josh Allen has played in games that matter down the stretch, when they were trying to win the AFC East and they're trying to win the division, and then last week in the playoff game against the Patriots, he has not hesitated to run the football. The Bills have not hesitated to call running plays. So I think he's going to go over this one. When the game's on the line, when you need situations matter, he can tuck it and run it. You can get a 20-yard pop here or there. You get 2 of those. You're right close. He is a weapon running the football. He's the second leading rusher on the team. I think he goes over the 51.5 yards rushing.
All right, I'll take that too. Allen has the legs. We've seen it this entire season and before that, dialing up until this weekend here. Danny Kanell, as always, my friend, appreciate you tapping in, giving us those strengths and weaknesses and those props that we do love heading into the divisional round. Taking a look at DK's recap here when we come to those picks. TB12, no love when it comes to the rushing yards. Expecting him to go under that 1.5 here. Matthew Stafford, look, turnovers have been a problem leading up to this point. Taking the over of the half interceptions, and Patrick Mahomes the under. Not expecting him to go off there against the Bills, and Josh Allen the over when it comes to those rushing yards of 49.5. Don't forget, of course, you got Saturday, but Sunday, Bills at Chiefs. That one will be on CBS at 6:30. These two, of course, met early in the season. The Bills got that one, but as I mentioned before, the Chiefs are a different team, looking more like the contender we saw in the past. Catch that on CBS and also streaming on Paramount+.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.